also want to introduce our first speaker of the day, Tahlia Sage. Tahlia is here to talk to us a little bit about hormones and healthy weight loss. Tahlia is the co-founder of Healing House Natural Wellness and a graduate of the IHN program. Before IHN, she studied nutritional sciences at UBC and is currently completing her Doctor of Naturopathy at the Alternative Medicine College of Canada. Tahlia combines multiple natural modalities, including nutrition, Western and Eastern herbalism, to provide transformative results for over 500 plus clients. Her clinical focus is on metabolic health, and Tahlia's own health challenges around weight loss prompted her to pursue an education in nutritional science as well as holistic nutrition. And Tahlia is a faculty and instructor here at IHN teaching Synth 1 and nutrition through the lifespan. So let's all give a warm virtual welcome to Tahlia and throw it over to Tahlia.
Thank you so much, Jason. Hi, everyone. I cannot see you, but hopefully you can see me. So let's get started here. I'm very excited to talk to you about metabolic health, as this is something I deal with on a daily basis when connecting and helping with my client every time, whether that's an autoimmune condition, that's cancer, that is a variety of health challenges, it always funnels back into metabolic health. So hopefully we're going to delve a little bit deeper into the topic. Whether you are interested or currently in the program, or you hopefully will join us in the future, or you just here for your own health, I hope to share some insights as to how to support your metabolic health, because hey, we've only got this one body, right? We got to take really good care of it. And not only that we survive into our old ages, but also more importantly, we have the ability to extend our health span. So the length of time you feel healthy and vibrant, and you can do whatever you choose to do. So let's take a look at our outline today. So first, I'm going to go over two major areas, talking about the hormones that control your weight. And second, we're going to talk about some of the metabolic factors that I look at in my clinical practice to help determine what are some of the factors that's holding back an individual from achieving their weight loss goals. And if we get to the number 3, I will mention a few areas of caretaking during and post weight loss. That way, we're not just losing the weight. First of all, we need to make sure ourselves and our clients are maintaining the results, as well as they don't suffer from unnecessary health challenges due to the fact that they lose so much weight so quickly. Okay, let's get started then. So the first hormone I want to share with you guys is, surprise, surprise, insulin. So what is insulin? Insulin is produced by those little cells, they're called beta cells, inside of our pancreas. And the main purpose of insulin, as you can see here, is being this storage hormone. So anabolic is just a fancy word to say it tells your body to store up. Think about somebody who likes to save, like, so when you make money, you save a lot of money. And I'll tell you the problem with that in a little bit. So now our understanding is insulin is equivalent to telling your body to store. Okay, so it tells your body to store nutrients in a few different ways. So first, it actively kind of puts the currency, which is glucose from our diet, directly shuttle them into cells. So insulin puts sugar into cells. Not only that, it also encourages our liver to push that sugar into long-term storage. And also, it is encouraging the body to turn fatty acids turn sugar into fatty acids. So there is this intricate relationship between carbohydrates and fats here. So when the body has excessive amounts of sugar, such as glucose, you've maxed out your muscle and liver storage. The next thing is insulin also encourages fat cell maturation and making the fat cell from fats that's easily accessible into mature fat cells. So that is what insulin does. So it's really a good hormone, you might ask. Yes, it is very important, because if human beings don't have the ability to store energy, then we have a problem. How are we going to survive long stretches of unpredictability and starvation? So we can't without insulin. So it is a very, very good hormone. But what the problem is when, I'm going to walk you through this graph in a little bit. So the problem lies when your body becomes chronically having this elevated levels of insulin, and when your body don't get enough signal to use up what you've already stored. You think about the input and the output. It's not that simple. It's not as if we put 300 calories in our body and we exercise and then we release that 300 calories. That's homeostasis. Then the third factor is actually insulin. So if we have excessive amounts of insulin in our bloodstream and all the time, that's going to give us the issue of chronically being in the storage mode and not being able to use up what the body has already stored. So this is a graph. This is a graph that shows how type 2 diabetes has an intricate connection with the insulin in our body. So when our body perceives stress, so we're not talking about acute stress, we're talking about chronic stress. This paper, if you get a copy of the presentation, this paper actually, there are papers that actually delve into people's stress level, the chronic stress that people been experiencing in the past couple of years to their progression of type 2 diabetes. So essentially, when our brain perceives a uncertain situation, stress, and it triggers our fight or flight response. So that stimulates our adrenal gland here, stimulates our adrenal glands to produce cortisol, which is our main stress response hormone. And when the body is flooded with cortisol, it allows the body to do several things. It's going to stimulate your liver to break down your glucose reserve, send it to the bloodstream, and it's also going to ask your muscle to release sugar as well. So basically, when the body perceives stress, the body releases sugar. And there is an evolutionary advantage to this, because when we're under actual danger, it is really wise to mobilize all of the resources to make sure that we can run away from that threat. But what's going on with people who live in stressful times or have elevated stress levels, what happens is the body not only breaks down sugar, stores sugar, and flood our system with this sugar, and it also prevents the body from really having that ability to have the good metabolic health. So there is a kind of correlation between stress and your pancreas. So pancreas, as you know, is where insulin is produced. In traditional Chinese medicine, pancreas is the seat of worry. So the seat of worry actually is where also the insulin is produced. Our body's stress response, release of cortisol, chronically elevates blood sugar. Then our pancreas respond to that elevated blood sugar with elevated insulin level. So we chronically live in this perpetual vicious cycle of elevated stress. Our pancreas is going to be chronically mobilized and excreting insulin to a point that our body is chronically turns excessive sugar into stored fat and decreasing our ability to be sensitive to insulin, resulting in irritability, maybe sugar crashes, and all of those undesirable mental and emotional effects as well. So when you think about the prevalence of people who suffers from type 2 diabetes, who also suffers from stress, depression, and anxiety, it is essentially a vicious cycle that perpetuates itself. Okay. So next topic, we have the thyroid hormone. Okay, so thyroid gland is the master metabolic command center of the body. The hormone that's released by the thyroid gland, I want you guys to hold on there for a moment, because it's like, why don't you call it the thyroid hormone? Because there are a variety of different types of thyroid hormones here. We're going to delve into the detail coming up in a little bit. So the thyroid will release hormones that affects every cell, organ, and tissue in the body. And when I see a client and they come to me with this blood report, and it's like their thyroid is not doing very well. Well, that doesn't tell me very much about why the thyroid is not doing very well. It's very clear to kind of see the connection between hypo, which is meaning suboptimally functioning thyroid, so hypothyroid, that leads to hair loss, that leads to digestive issues, that leads to hair loss. But it's very, very unclear from just the report, the TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone. Just from that data alone, it's very, very hard to tell me what is really affecting the thyroid gland. Because the thyroid gland, because it affects so many aspects of our health, of our body, it is also very sensitive to the internal and environmental stressors. For example, from an environmental standpoint, heavy metal, being an endocrine organ full of fatty tissues, the thyroid gland is very prone to heavy metal accumulation. And heavy metal happens to displace iodine, which is a very main component of thyroid hormone. The thyroid gland is also very sensitive to emotional and metabolic stressors. What do I mean? So by metabolic stressor, which we will cover towards the end of our discussion, so the metabolic stressor means the hidden, chronic, drawn out inflammatory processes in the body. What about emotional stress? This can be a variety of different things to every different person. So if you work with a client or you think back on your own life, what are some of the significant emotional stressors in your life? Think about the type of conversation you have with yourself in your mind. Do you spend most of the time with yourself having acceptance or accepting yourself, living in alignment with your true self? Or do you always experience fear, or do you experience grief? Whether that's losing someone or the grief of life not being able to continue the way you plan it would continue. So all of those can increase the inflammatory processes in the body, increase cortisol production, and in turn affects the thyroid. When you think about from an evolution standpoint, again, the thyroid is a master command center of metabolism. So when you are under trauma, emotional, physical trauma, the natural thing to help the body to heal is to actually slow everything down. Slow down metabolism, slow down everything so that the body can have a chance to catch up. However, if that process becomes the daily occurrence, and for years upon years upon years, that will have a negative effect on your thyroid health. And the number 3 is that affects the thyroid health is sex hormone fluctuations that also include not just male and female hormones, but it also has to do with environmental hormones, things that's derivatives of plastics, that, and also a lot of pesticides, herbicides, when you think about conventionally produced food, animals that's being treated with hormones. Those are the kind of things that can add to the hormonal disruptive effect that can in turn also affects the thyroid. If you're wondering, how does it work? Let me give you a little bit more information on that. So when you think about someone who's estrogen dominant, I know it's a term that's been thrown around all over the place, but I want you to think on somebody in your life who suffers from severe PMS symptoms, who have trouble with water retention. So people who feel a little bit puffy on the face, in the legs, people who also have problem with weight loss. They also may suffer from thinning hair as well. Think about a woman like that in your life. Can probably think on a friend or a relative, someone in the family who suffers from these issues. So when the body, in a female body, when the estrogen and progesterone are out of balance, especially when the body has too little progesterone or too much estrogen, or the body is exposed to too much environmental estrogens, the thyroid might be just fine, but the estrogen actually gobble up all of these free-flowing thyroid hormones via thyroid hormone binding globulin, so binds to all of them and leaving very little left for the tissues and the cells in our body. So when there's elevated or estrogen that's out of balance, the body tend to have lower thyroid function. Your brain must be wondering, where did all the thyroid hormone go? It's like the thyroid told the brain, it's like, I produced a lot of thyroid hormones. Where did they go? You told me to produce these thyroid hormones, but I don't know where they went. So the brain said to the thyroid, oh, if you don't know where they went, so let's just produce some more. So it becomes this feedback loop where the brain constantly, especially the hypothalamus, chronically shout at the thyroid, okay, there's not enough thyroid hormones, let's produce more, let's produce more. So that's when you see on a blood report someone has low thyroid function, the TSH is actually, as opposed to low, is actually very high. So it's basically your brain is getting frustrated at the employee, the thyroid. It's like, where's the outcome? Where's the product? The thyroid is like, I don't know. I tried my best. Where did it go? So it keeps on producing more and more thyroid hormones. So that's the relationship and connection there. And if we take a look at this graph from the Institute of Functional Medicine, you will notice stress, infections, toxins, autoimmunity, so elevated inflammation status of the body, can prevent the thyroid from functioning, producing thyroid hormones in the first place. And similar, very, very similar factors, stress, trauma, infections, chronic people who's on a yo-yo diet, not just a yo-yo diet, but people who overdo on keto diet, people who overdo it with the intermittent fasting, is actually putting additional stress on the thyroid. So even though, like in case the thyroid is actually producing those hormones, these factors can, so first of all, like what we said with the sex binding, with the thyroid hormone binding globulin with elevated amount of estrogen, can actually gobble up those thyroid hormones. In these scenarios, the body actually deactivate the free-flowing T3, which is the active thyroid hormone. So it deactivated by turning the structure of an active T3 into the mirror image, which is a reverse T3, which is not compatible with our cells. Oh, whoops. And conversely, by giving the body certain nutrients like selenium, zinc, B vitamins, vitamin C, vitamin D, they're all contributing to the building blocks and supporting the normal production of thyroid hormones. But most importantly, when we're dealing with a hypothyroid case, it is very important to examine these factors rather than stimulating the thyroid from the get-go. It's important to know why the thyroid is not functioning. So we talked about factors such as heavy metals, hormonal imbalance, metabolic emotional stress, lack of nutrients, those being the different nuanced factors that slows down thyroid function, thus slow down someone's effort to achieve their weight loss goals. Okay, so now we've covered our basics, the hormones that can affect your weight loss journey. Then let's talk about ways that you can improve your metabolic health. Yeah, sounds like a good plan. Okay, so when I work with clients, there are 3 foundational pieces that we need to take care when we're talking to someone who needs to lose some weight to be healthier. So number 1, when we're talking about all of those cortisols, how do we translate that to working with an actual person? So if you're listening in, it's like all of those heavy science is really not giving you any action steps, and here are the action steps for you. So first, I want you to make de-stressing your body a priority. Okay, so what does de-stressing the body means? So first, we talked about the actual physical stress on the body, when people have sleep challenges, when people are under a lot of work stress, life stress, it is very important that you make sleep a priority. What that means is capturing the golden hours of resting. So the 8 hours, excuse my math here, that's why I'm not a math teacher. So just give you a very rough example. So 8 hours a night is usually how long people, the average person, need to be having good quality sleep to recover and restore their body. So if you get those 8 hours from, let's say, let's try 3 a.m. From 3 a.m. to 11 a.m. So what you're missing out on is the critical hours, according to the TCM body clock, you're missing out on those critical hours of really good, deep restorative sleep. So this, you can try it if you don't believe me. You can try to go to bed at 3, get up at 11, versus if you are in bed and asleep by 10 o'clock and get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm sure there's going to be people, a very small percentage of people that actually are night owls, and that's the minority. But for the majority of people, the best time to be asleep are those golden hours between 10 o'clock at night. If you cannot make 10 o'clock, do 11 o'clock at night to 6 or 7 in the morning. Is that way you're really taking advantage of the best time for the body to detox and restore, and that's between somewhere between midnight to 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Okay, after that, your colon is waking up, body is actually going into a lighter and lighter sleep, so that you're getting ready for the next day. So making sleep a priority. And another reason to make sleep a priority, probably also heard about those hormones called leptin and ghrelin. So leptin is the satiation hormone, satiety hormone, that kind of regulates your perception of fullness. And ghrelin, from the word, you can think about the growling stomach, the ghrelin. The ghrelin is your hunger hormone. So according to a Harvard study, when you actually just miss out on one night of sleep, however much that sleep is for you, whether that's 6 hours, 8 hours, the next day, your ghrelin and leptin becomes out of whack. And when that continues, the body goes into a more deregulated state of metabolism. So after that continues for some time, you can still eat healthy and not being able to achieve the same amount of result if you were sleeping on time and getting enough sleep. And then now that leads us to the second point, adrenal health. So one of the most important remedies for adrenal fatigue, adrenal exhaustion is sleep, having good quality sleep. So we're finished talking about what happens at night. Now let's move on to what happens during the day. And for you, if you want to really de-stress your body, there are a few very important things that you need to do. So first, this is what I can help you with as a nutritionist. We can look into your specific personality, your current state of health, and your other concerns, and put together a customized adrenal adaptogenic formula. Just to think about your you being able to put on a cushion that allows you to take a lot of stress in the world. that is, these adaptogens are plants that can increase your adrenal glands resistance to stress. And when you, just a fun fact, when your adrenal output, when you're actually really not taking care of your adrenals, and the adrenal hormones is elevating at the initial stages, there's actually going to be a little enlargement. The adrenal glands themselves are actually enlarged because they're overproducing adrenal hormones. So by taking these adaptogenic plants, it's like putting a little armor on these adrenal glands so that they don't go into that unnecessary state of being overworked. So that's your adrenal health. The next thing is something potentially a counselor or someone who can help you in the mental emotional area can help you with. I find a lot of people very much in their mind say a lot of bad things about themselves. I'm not good enough. I'm not trying hard enough. I'm not working hard enough, or I'm not doing enough. So those kind of negative talk, that kind of negative self-talk, a negative relationship with oneself is what I find occupying 70-80% of the waking hours of bandwidth for some of the clients I helped. So I feel that's a very important factor. If you spend 70%, 80% of your day thinking negative things about yourself, then that's definitely not going to be supportive of adrenal health. And thirdly, this is also very important, is to really switch yourself into another state. And by that, I mean going on a bike ride, taking a walk in the forest. If you have a garden, or if you like to cook, just pull yourself out of whatever that is you do on a daily basis and allow yourself to go into that more relaxed, creative, more that free-flowing state for at least 4 hours out of a week. And there are scientists that find at least 4 hours a week. It doesn't have to be all together on the same day, but that really disconnecting time is very important for your adrenal health. And having reduced your cortisol level, that's going to be very important for your metabolic health. Second is liver health. So what do I do when I work with someone who's trying to lose weight is really taking care of their liver health, because liver is a very metabolically active organ. We'll look at some of the factors I look at clinically, how well their liver is helping with metabolism, and how well the liver is metabolizing fats. So with liver health, there are two things very critical for clients or yourselves to do. You're not gonna like it. I don't like it. I don't like arugula. I do not like bitter melon. I do not like radishes, but I eat them anyways, because bitter and pungent flavors. I want you to think about bitter melon. If you haven't tried that, think about really bitter arugula, bitter lettuces, pungent. What is pungent? Mustard greens. Think about horseradish. You can even ferment horseradish. Those bitter and pungent flavors are energetically supportive, has affinity for the liver. And if you look at the scientific side of things, these things have plant compounds that can contain sulfur. They're called indoles, that has really potent anti-cancer effects. And they help to promote bile flow. They stimulate bile production, and it enhances your body's natural ability to detox. The second one, when we're talking about taking care of this very metabolically active organ, is reducing refined carbohydrate intake. And by that, I mean, forget about the regular breakfast. When your clients tell you they have cereal for breakfast, granola, I don't care how much money they spend on those things, those are still called refined carbohydrates. And why do we want to reduce refined carbohydrate intake for liver health to optimize the liver? It's because too much of these carbohydrates is actually going to turn into fatty acids that can deposit into the liver, sending off inflammatory signals called cytokines and perpetually increasing the inflammatory load of the liver. There's a term you can look up, it's called lipotoxicity. So essentially, what it means is excessive amounts of sugar, carbohydrates, they actually turn into fatty acids that's going to deposit onto the liver, and then the liver doesn't work as well as before. Body produce more inflammation trying to heal, and the body keep on receiving these carbohydrates, and the liver continue to make fatty acids, trying to kind of like you have a lot of homework, you like to push it aside. So in this case, your body, by dealing with these excessive carbohydrate, it makes it into fatty acid, push it aside to deal with it later. But in this case, the liver is accumulating more and more fatty deposits on it and is poisoning itself with these fatty acids produced by excessive refined carbohydrate intake. Okay, to counter that, eat the things you don't like to eat. Mustard greens, radishes, and there's so many different kinds of radishes you can try. I met many of people who hate radish, just because they've always been given that one type of radish. There's so many different types of radish. If we have Q&A time, you can ask me what type of radish is good as an introductory radish, talking about. And bitter things, other supportive foods can be cucumbers, peppermint, those can all support the bile flow within the liver. So the next area that translate into talking to clients how to take care of their metabolic health is lowering inflammation. So that with that, we're going to try to help the client understand where that inflammation, where is it presenting as a symptom, and where does it come from? Two things you want to take care of your client. So we're going to do a little bit of assessment to find out where that inflammation comes from. A lot of times it comes from the digestive system, from leaky gut, and how it's presented can be very different for everyone. So in this example, it's joint pain, and for some people is mental emotional health, low mood, depressive moods, anxiety, and for some people is just a crushing headache, and for some people it's chronic sinus problems. So this can be very different for everyone. It's important to find the source, which a majority of the inflammation comes from the gut, and then helping the client with those symptoms, and then on the back end, helping them lowering the inflammatory load. Okay, so now looking at these three areas, let's take a look at what are some of the factors that can really hold someone back from eating, from losing weight. If they're eating healthy, if they're trying to exercise, what are those things that's holding them back and making them not getting any results, or even sometimes the opposite results, what they're looking for. So first, some of these factors when I'm working with a client who talking about lowering the inflammatory load, is we look into the gut. So what are some of the areas that can impact digestion. So number one is Candida. Candida is on its own, it's very benign. We all have Candida in our body. It's a type of yeast and fungus that can be a little bit opportunistic. So that means when you have stress, you have lowered immunity, or after a round of antibiotic, or the person's infected with a parasite, Candida tend to take that opportunity and replicate itself, and resulting in yeast and fungal overgrowth. And if you haven't experienced Candida overgrowth, I knock on wood and I hope you never ever have to experience Candida overgrowth. But it literally is this very, very irritating white film that irritates the digestive tract. And in some cases, it can even be systematic. So people have yeast overgrowth in their armpits. Some people have it in the groin area, also known as jock rashes. And also for women, it can be in the reproductive tract, and that becomes a vaginal yeast overgrowth situation. And it's a lot of that actually is within the gut, and we need to take care of this. And another area that can hold someone back from losing weight is small intestinal overgrowth. So small intestinal bacterial overgrowth means you see right here, this is our colon, yeah? And then small intestine is here. Okay, not really showing this where the small intestine, but it is essentially the colon bacteria migrating into the ileum. So it passed through the ileocecal valve and into the small intestine. Because the bacteria is not supposed to be there, so it's releasing a lot of these gas and causing a lot of digestive discomforts and malabsorption. Speaking of malabsorption, leaky gut and food sensitivities, where a lot of these small intestine cells become inflamed and damaged by inflammation, that allows the person to mount an immune reaction to otherwise benign foods that they consume on a regular basis. And other factors such as stress, medications, can prevent the body from producing enough stomach acid, bile salts, and digestive enzyme, preventing the body from breaking things down and extracting the good nutrients that they put into their body. Probably always, everyone knows of somebody who always, the first person that gets food poisoning, and you always have that friend who's tend to be always feeling the digestive discomforts after a big meal. Probably know somebody like that. One big factor is stress. Stress can actually reduce all of these things from being produced, and also slow down the body's intestinal movement called peristalsis, allowing some of these earlier said things to happen, and putrefied food, feeds yeast and fungus, feeds those bacteria, and those can further damage the intestinal tract and creating more inflammation in the body that becomes systematic. So how I assess if the person's digestion is doing well, of course, I have food sensitivity testing. I have Candida testing. I can do a leaky gut test to see whether people have actually how leaky their gut is. But one of the most direct way to look at this issue is via the urinary indican test. So the very non-invasive is from urine. So the indican is basically a putrefaction byproduct that's resulting from the disharmony of the gut bacteria and poor absorption and breakdown of proteins. And if I see high amounts of urinary indican, I definitely will say this person has protein digestion issues, possibly Candida, possibly small intestine, bacterial overgrowth, and definitely disharmony in the gut. And when we have poor protein digestion, this is when we run into putrefaction, those rotting that can inflame the gut. And also a lot of these protein are the backbone of neurotransmitters. So we're potentially looking at someone who's feeling anxious or depressed. Okay, so very quickly, I know we're wrapping up here, detoxification, and specifically liver detoxification. So this is one other area that I look at, especially for people who have problem losing weight, because a lot of times liver is to blame when someone has stubborn weight. So let's do a recap of what the liver does in terms of detoxification. It produces bile that eliminate excessive amounts of cholesterol and help with the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins. And in this profile of client, think about someone who has metabolic disorders. This person might have not clinical diabetes, but they have elevated HbA1c, which is the blood sugar protein level. That's an average of the past 3 months. They might also have undesirable cholesterol levels, cholesterol, triglyceride, LDL, you name it. So this person who have trouble losing weight might need bile production support, or they might not even have a gallbladder. You got to ask the client. Sulfur. Sulfur is very important to contribute to glutathione production, overall anti-inflammatory, very restorative, master antioxidant. And there's also to support liver detox, one would need to get these nutrients from food. So lipotrophic, just the fancy way of saying kind of liquefies things, emulsify things. And the goal of these nutrients in larger quantities is to be like a plumber. It decongests the liver. So these are some of these things. B vitamins, choline, methionine and inositol, dimethylglycine, which is a methyl donor. Think about it donates a methyl group. Trimethylglycine, it donates the methyl group, also known as betaine. Get that, a lot of that in beets. And dimethylglycine, you get a lot of from beans and legumes, and also liver itself. Okay, so to assess how well the liver is detoxifying, I want to look at the total bile acid, which also can be measured through the urine. So the total bile acid, if it's too high, so the body is overproducing these bile acids, it might mean this person is at a higher risk of viral infections, and it's also a sign that the liver is overworking and there might be liver cell injury. A low level of bile acid means that there might be being a laxative and being a natural antimicrobial agent. It means that this person might be suffering from irritable bowel conditions, malabsorption issues from poor absorption of fat-based vitamins, or someone who's experiencing IBS, especially the diarrhea kind. And to assess the overall inflammation, we can look at, of course, actually how leaky the gut is, the actual level of zonulin is the amount, the data I look at, but I also look at the urinary 8-hydroxy-2-deoxyguanosine, short for 8-OHDG. So basically, this protein is a byproduct of DNA oxidation. It's a biomarker for people who's over-exercising or people who has inflammatory damage in the body. It's way more sensitive than the C-reactive protein. It's a very, very sensitive biomarker for oxidative stress in the body. If we have elevated that, OHDG, we need to address the inflammation before we talk about losing weight.